In very brief words, Berlinale Talents is the networking and summit initiative of the Berlin International Film Festival, which is the Berlinale for most of the people in the world. It was founded 30 years ago, and the idea is very easy. So we bring together people, younger people and more experienced people. That was the initial idea. Nowadays, we just bring together people, although some are a little bit younger than the others. But it's already a tricky thing. But the thing is that we bring them together to network, of course, but also to share experiences in words or in numbers. It's 300 talents from around the world that we have, all coming from different fields of work, so 12 different fields of work coming from actors, directors, producers, you name it. And we invite around 100 experts, and the initiative concludes into a huge summit program, and surrounding this a studio program for the particular fields of work, and a script development program for short films, doc films, and for fiction feature-length films.
I'm Nicole, working for Sources 2. It's a European program for script writing development. And, wow.
Is it us?
So the workshops are addressed to professional filmmakers working on a script and development, especially feature films or creative documentaries. And our second workshop format is a mentors training for filmmakers and screenwriters. So it is addressed to professional filmmakers working as mentors, and who would like to enhance their skills in mentoring. So yeah, these are the basic information about Sources 2 for the moment.
Okay, I'm Lisa Howe. I'm Creative England's Senior Skills Manager. We exist to provide access to markets, to finance, to business support for creative individuals and businesses across a range of sectors. So we work across film, from shorts to features, games, digital business, and TV drama. Now, a large part of that offer is actually ensuring that those people have the right skills, both creative and commercial, the knowledge and the contacts to be able to succeed. We run a whole range of activity in terms of training, from making your first short film through to making your first or second feature. We run regional production funds. We also work to invest in startup businesses and to help businesses to grow.
I'm Isabelle Croissant. I work at Home Art Centre in Manchester. Today I'm representing our scheme Feature Expanded, which is a scheme for visual artists who want to move into the feature film world. So it's for visual artists who have a feature film project in early stage of development, and it's in partnership with the Lo Schermo dell'Arte Festival in Florence in Italy, and the scheme has just started this year in June, and it's 2 residentials, one in Manchester, one in Florence, where 12 participants work with have one-to-one tutorial, masterclass, case study with expert and professional from the film world who help them develop their project, but also gain an understanding of how the film world processes and networks work. And then they develop a pitch to be pitched at the festival in Florence in November.
Hello, everybody. Does it go okay? Yeah, like this. Hey, I'm Mille Haynes. I'm from Copenhagen International Documentary Film Festival. I am the head of CPA's lab, which is our training and development facility. Basically what we do is each year we handpick 20 directors from all over Europe. We pair you guys in teams of 2. We invite you to Copenhagen during the festival for 10 days of workshop. And by the end of the workshop, we give a development grant to each team of roughly 13,000 euros. And then we encourage you to enter a co-production, producing the film that you developed together during the workshop. And the plan is to have it ready within a year, and we help you guys go around in markets, finding more funding, and basically just encourage film directors to take more initiative, also more charge of the production process. Especially in documentary, it's usually the case that most directors also sort of co-produce their own stuff, because we work for many years on one project. There's never enough money. It's a very lonely task at times. So now we are encouraging directors to come together across borders and find more money, but also produce in less time. So, yeah, in short.
Thank you. I think one of the issues from being on the outside looking in as filmmakers is why do certain projects get picked and other projects don't. And I think particularly when projects are nascent, you know, the question is, well, what are you looking for? What are you spotting? What is it that... So I would like to ask again, each of you, sorry to sort of treat you like a line, but just a little bit of insight into, in a sense, it's not about brand, but it's about the sort of conceptual relationship with material that your particular way of working, your particular program, you know, works. So what you're looking for, I suppose, in a way. What is it about talent? Because when we're talking about development, we're talking about talent. We're talking about people's vision and ambition and their ability to convey that clearly. So how do you measure that? That's the question I'll ask when I get rejected by Creative Europe.
Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Interject with something here. Because actually the program that I'm sort of mainly here to talk about today is something called Talent X. And that program precisely asks that question. It's not actually a program for talent themselves, but it's for the people who are developing talent. So it's actually a bringing together of people from film funds, from talent labs, bringing producers into the room, bringing sales agents, bringing distributors in the room to actually look at some of those questions and look at how we develop talent. And you know, what works best? Is there a magic formula? The answer is not. You know, it seems to vary. So yeah. I just wanted to tip that on its head slightly, in that we're not just developing talent, but we're actually trying to improve ourselves as talent developers and trying to encourage more discussion, particularly with public film funds, in terms of getting talent out there into the market.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And from the practical perspective of an initiative that has around 4,000 applications per year and can select only 300, so there are of course many questions to raise and many question marks in our minds when we go through it. And I think we will never have this answer, what is talent, what is not talent, but there's one thing that I find always very important, also if you select films, if you invite people, that's integrity. And we're in our selection process, and that's the way we do it in a way, because we do not do any Skype interviews or something like this. We just have a short excerpt of 3 minutes. We have some questions answered, and we have your filmography, and this triangle in a way has to make sense. And then there's one other important thing, is that we ask people to raise questions. And if the question makes sense, if you feel there's some anger, there's something to do, and this is not a power speech to encourage you, but this is really something that helps us to create an idea of who this person is, then we think, okay, a question is sometimes better than an answer. And if this question is worth to come to Berlin in the person, then we can bring together these people, and there's certainly an answer to it. And this is sometimes more important than this thing with the success story. So I followed the other session, and I thought to myself, oh shit, do I know success stories? So do I know films that win? Of course, plenty. But this is a proof of talent, but there's another proof of talent, and sometimes this is, for example, if just 7 people found each other and now did a film together in Berlin. That's cool. So that's success.
Anybody else want to say anything about?
I totally agree. This is also my experience. Apart from this, of course, with the question, which I think is really accurate in a way, we're also looking for people who are courageous and curious and not afraid of being vulnerable in the process. I think that's paramount to any kind of talent in any kind of business, basically. So yeah, just to add a little bit to yours.
Okay, so just in terms of one of the issues that now, because development is changing the nature of development is changing across the marketplace. And it's very important, obviously, the filmmakers are the ones who are driving that change, partly, it's a sort of synchronized relationship. But one of the things that is really interesting about the European development world is that we are developing in many, many languages. And so how do your schemes cope with that? How do you respond to lots of different languages in the room? And that's not the case for all of you, of course, but how do you respond to that in terms of recognizing that one of the key things that I seem to understand from development programs is the importance of the ambition of the scheme is to help develop for an international market. So there are lots of wires going out in different directions. How do you manage that?
I mean,
Nicole, I think Nicole's a good person to answer that one. I think that's probably directed at you more than anyone, actually.
no, I mean, what we do in our program is to have group works and very small group works, so that we put together different internationally different cultural backgrounds, different professional experience, and that they brainstorm together and that they create collaborative partnerships during the workshop. So you have a non-competitive atmosphere there. So you work as colleagues and not as, people who just have to follow their own.
So are you saying that the very nature of the program itself helps to sort of embed
Of course, yes.
those relationships that then help the project to respond to an international audience because of the voices in the room? Which is a great advocate for what you're trying to do, full stop, isn't it? That it actually encourages the opportunity for people to question your material coming from an outsider's point of view because they don't understand necessarily what you're trying to do.
This not necessarily means probably that you have to make your project again into something very international. So if we talk about different languages, and this is not only the language we are speaking, but also the languages of how we tell stories, how we do editing, how we do whatever, how acting is done in different cultures, this can be considered as a benefit. And we more or less, and I think this goes for many of you as well, we encourage them to stay very local with what they do. So be very specific. Do a story that comes from deep roots somewhere, if this is these are your own roots or the roots of your culture. And then, of course, we try to make this international in terms of how to encourage other people just to watch it, just to do it, and just to go on this journey. And this is more or less a question where the distributors come into the game, or the producers, the creative producers, the impact producers, the ones that try to translate these languages to others.
There's also, there's also the different languages within the different industries. So one of the reasons why Feature Expanded was developed was there's great voices in the visual arts world, and the film worlds as in an industry sometimes work differently. But it's just a question of understanding the processes of each world and just making them connect and work together to kind of develop the creative voice of the talent, really.
In terms of the job of development, there is always the need to respond to the marketplace and to the industry at large. So how do you help filmmakers reach out to a broader audience? Because that is in every funding application that I certainly come across and have asked to assess on, there is a requirement, and I'm sure people would probably concur, to talk about the market when perhaps actually what you're submitting is a 30-page document or a 10-page document on a project that's not even developed. So, and I'm sure you're very aware of that. So how do you help people to understand what that actually means and how you can translate that in such a way that you are interesting and don't just say, oh, well, I'll give it to, sort of Protagonist and, Wild Bunch, and everyone writes the same thing, and then it's meaningless. So how do you support the need for development to be plugged into the business of filmmaking?
We are focusing a lot on that at the CPH Lab. And it's very scary for most film directors to think audience and money up front. It really is, and it continues to be that. But what we also find is if we talk about this in a way that makes sense creatively, by knowing you can reach your audience, and it can actually influence on your idea while you're developing the idea. It suddenly becomes more important for the film director also to understand how these things play together. My background is film producing, and when I've worked with directors, I can see that sometimes they don't understand at all what a producer does. And I think it's very important that directors understand this and that they take charge of it. So what we do at the workshop is we bring in a lot of different stakeholders to give feedback, but also to brainstorm on their initial ideas from the very get-go. So we have campaign people, we have money people, we have all kinds of different stakeholders in each project coming in and just brainstorming with the directors. And I find that to open a lot of doors, both ways basically. Also, so the people with the money understand that they can invest in a project without demanding that people have film for 3 years before you get a development grant. We're sort of trying to challenge that a little bit by giving the money up front and then encouraging other people to give more money up front. Lisa, yeah.
I completely agree with that experience. And also I think what's a vital part of that is to equip writers in particular with the confidence and ability to retain, be true to their own voice, whilst filtering all of the range of opinions that they're being exposed to when they're encountering all of these, different perspectives on, how many seats is this going to sell, who's this going to go through. At the same time, I think it is critical that you enable them to be true to that voice, that story that they're trying to tell, so that it doesn't get pulled around and twisted, and they learn how to take in, over time, intuitively, they take in what is the right feedback to help them shape it, and the things that they can simply go, yeah, that's interesting, but do you know what? I'm not going to take that on board.
Okay. So what, in terms of the process of script writing, what tools and techniques do you think can be learned and that you're able to really help with? Because people say you can't teach people how to write, and I suspect that's possibly true, but you can certainly teach people to write better, right? So what do you do? How do you help?
For us, what we do is we bring an expert in. So we part of our process in the residential is all the people come with a feature film project in development as early stage as it can be, and similarly to what you were saying, we put them in touch with loads of different experts in a trustworthy environment where they can work together. But in terms of script writing, basically, yeah, we work with a script developer, and she goes through all the project at whatever stage they're at, and just kind of gives feedback and talk to them and bring in her experience, and also, as you were saying, just kind of make them understand how to maybe express their vision clearly and concisely. Yeah.
I think it's really hard to teach how to write, and it's probably also a question whether the initiatives we have with this normally very short period of time, it's just a window, so far as it's just a window of 6 days, so super short, whether this is the right moment to teach someone how to solve an issue, how to make the script better. But there's one thing that you can teach, I think, perfectly well in these kind of events, that's changing perspectives. And there's really something that you have to learn sometimes, that you have to learn to change the perspective of yourself and see your script from the outside, probably a little bit mirrored by someone like a mentor, like an expert, by another fellow. And this was what will open your mind, change probably something very practical. And talking about the experiences that we do in the talent development labs, it's most times that they work on the script, but sometimes the mentor just grabs the talents and says, let's go to the cinema and sit down, because I see there's some kind of thing going on in your script, and we should talk a little bit about how cinema works, how audience, by the way, looks like, and then we have another reason to talk about this afterwards. And I find this very helpful, so because it can be very open-minded, and it's not at all a situation of a teacher pupil.
you?
I totally agree to that. So, I mean, if it would be so easy to read a book on screenwriting, we had a lot of good scripts in the end and good films. So, I mean, our workshop Sources 2 is also not a workshop which uses screenwriting formulas. So, our aim is to to understand the needs of each single project and their creators, and then to develop together in a group work how you can reach the maximum out of the idea that is given there. And yeah, I mean...
And just so, following off one of the questions that was put out there was, what about pitching? Do you think teaching people, writers particularly, because I think producers accept that it's part of the process, but what about writers?
I mean, it's hard to teach, but each screenwriter should be able to tell their story in a very brief and compact way, with full of passion. So this is a basis, so everyone should do this. But I think for us in our workshops, we do it in a very, very protected framework. So we don't force them to stand in front of a lot of people and pitch their story, but they can train it in a very small group and lose fears about it and don't be afraid. And then they are prepared for the outside world, maybe in the end. But I mean, not every screenwriter is a good seller.
No, not every screenwriter has to be one. So that's what you told us about the group work and the collaboration in the team. So, and I would even say, so a screenwriter should be able, as you say, to explain the story, to make it passionate. To sell a story is the job of a producer or someone around, and that's a big advantage, that there's someone who's protecting you and giving you the space to develop something, and then someone else who says, okay, I'm there to bring it now to the world.
So in terms of those of you who run schemes specifically for developing projects and talent around those projects, is there any sort of follow-on facility that you can provide in terms of finding a producer if there isn't a producer attached to the project already, or is that just something that the filmmakers have to do themselves?
Well, at CPH Lab, it's sort of a full circle service, you could say. We help set up producer collaborations with each team if they want us to. And also I will travel with the teams for a year afterwards, trying to raise additional funding for the people who are interested in it and ready for it. So basically, and the different tutors that we have on board, we're working with two very skilled documentary filmmakers in Denmark. We have a script consultant from Germany, and we are constantly adding more people to the team. And they will follow the projects throughout the course of a year, if the teams want it. So yes, full circle.
What about with you, Isabelle? I was wondering, in terms, you're bringing people who are already not necessarily entirely at home in the film world into that environment, and so how do you help that progress?
So it's the first year of the project. So first of all, some visual artists are also used to do everything, like produce their own work within the visual art world. So first we put them in touch in quite an intimate environment with professionals. So there's 12 participants per course, and this year we had 4 producers who shared their experience and their tips and their networks. Both within the residential period in Manchester, but also between the 2 residential, they are in contact online, etc. They all have a kind of network where they can have a certain amount of time one-to-one. They also work in groups of 4 with one specific tutor who is both crossing over from the visual arts and the film world, who usually have an extensive experience in producing. So yeah, this is where they're at the moment.
What about you, Nicole? What?
I think it's also important to build networks, not only for your own project, but with the others. So what we, for example, have is we have an initiative together with EAVE, the program EAVE, that we share the contact details between our former participant and their former participant, that they can create new contacts and so find, find partnerships between the producers of the EAVE program and our writer. So I think it's always good to open up and
it's very isolating being a writer. I mean, that's one of the problems of writing, isn't it? Is that you write a script and one, you don't know if it's any good. I mean, you think, of course, that it's brilliant, but you're not necessarily sure or right. Mm-hmm. And two, how do you find a director? How do you find a producer? You know, I mean, most schemes don't allow writers to apply on their own anyway. I mean, obviously with the exception. So it's a crucial part of the development of writers is to have dialogue and to have relationships that allow them to therefore go into production. So it's a key part of the whole sort of chain of events, really, from a development perspective. There is nevertheless, I think, an issue in terms of filmmakers wanting to write for different media and for expanding the possibility of the platforms on which their stories will be told. And I wonder very, very quickly if anyone is thinking about that and working in terms of that, because this traditional model of the 100-page script and then the sort of series outline and the character bible for the TV series is not dying, but there are lots of other things that are happening too. There's a proliferation of ways of developing material. I mean, it's completely normal now people to do mood boards and sizzle reels, even at a very, very early stage of projects, because of the visual medium. And it's great that we have access to that material really easily. So are you responding to that in terms of where your projects are going, do you think?
I think, is it okay?
Yeah.
I think speaking with two hats on, so with the Talent X end in terms of how developers work with this, but also with a Creative England hat in terms of our own programs and the remit of different creative sectors that we cover. Certainly trying to introduce and expose people to the possibilities, not to kind of give them a prescriptive, hey, you will do this with that idea, or have you thought of developing for this instead, but actually just opening up and exposing people to the possibilities, but also to other people that are already also interested in working that and getting them to collaborate is a way that we're trying to approach it. But it really does seem to vary from individual to individual as to how open and willing they are to try that. And obviously we don't want to force it with anybody. But I think it is a big challenge that we found. In theory, we would love to be doing that with people, but in practice, I'd be completely honest and say that, we found it hard to get people thinking that way.
It'll come.
In the world of documentary, we've been doing it for years and years because we've had to. We have too many funders with too little money, and so we're used to pitching, and we're used to online sales, craftsmanship, and all kinds of inventive stuff to just make it happen. So maybe you should look to documentary a little bit when you talk to your scriptwriters.
I suppose that's why also we develop Feature Expanded, because there's a lot of different models and way of working within visual arts and films, and knowing the existing established process is one step into understanding each other word, but also in kind of bringing the inventiveness and vision of both worlds together to create something new is something that we're interested in as well, and we're doing it via the individual rather than just. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we have to stop it there. So thank you so much, all of the panel, for sharing your fantastic views with us today.